Welcome to Rambam In-Depth. Today we'll be discussing the Rambam Hilchos Sotah, Perek Beis Halacha Gimel, where the Rambam talks about the warning that has to be given to the Sotah, to a woman who's suspected of adultery, that the husband has to have warned her. But there are certain exemptions, certain exceptions to the rule. One of them is that the Rambam quotes the pasuk, V'amar el ha'isha, the husband says to the woman. So what does this teach you? Prat, this excludes l'misha eina shemas, a woman who cannot hear. Because the Torah says he has to speak to her, obviously she has to be able to hear it. So the question is asked, what about if the warning that the husband gives his wife was bichtav, was in writing, wasn't verbalized, it was sent in writing? The husband sends a letter to his wife and tells her, I don't want you to be alone with that individual. Is that considered a valid warning? This is an actual question that was sent to the Maharsham, one of the greatest halachic authorities in Galicia, about 100 years ago or so. And this is where a man warns his wife. He was in another city, and he sends her a letter in the mail. Be careful, don't allow this person to sleep in our house. This was a person who used to come to their town for business, and he would stay in their house. But now that I'm not home, the husband writes, I don't want you to have him over our house because he's a very unscrupulous person and an adulterer, and therefore he's warning his wife not to be alone with that person. So the question was asked to the Maharsham whether that's considered to be a valid warning or not. And the reason for the question is because we find in different areas of halacha that there's discussion about whether writing is the same thing as verbalizing. For example, there's a machlokes achreinim about Shvuah bichtav. If a person swears in writing, if that's considered a valid oath, and all the halachas that are associated with Shvuah would apply or not. And many authorities say, no, Akiva does not constitute a mira, speech. Tzemach Tzedek has two tshuvas on this, and it seems clear that a Shvuah bichtav would not be acceptable. Why? Because the Torah uses the term levate b'svasayim. You have to utter it with your lips. Writing may be as good as speaking in terms of knowing the person's intentions, but that doesn't mean it's considered movement of the lips. Same question is asked with regard to counting Sefirah. Rabbi Eiger has a Teshuva about that, whether a person could count Sefirah in writing. Instead of saying the words, today is so many days, so the Omer, he puts it in writing. And Rabbi Akiva Eiger says you don't have to have it verbalized. As long as you do it in writing, it's just as good as you do it in speech. And the logic can be very compelling because speech is considered a maisa zuta, a minimal form of action. Ksiva, writing, is a maximal form of expression. It's a maisa, it's a significant action. So one could argue if you can count Sefirah with your mouth, you can certainly count Sefirah with writing. Of course, there are svaras and reasons to say no, that it has to be dafka, and it has to be dafka counting, which means verbalizing it. At any rate, with regard to a Shvuah, with regard to Sefirah, there's those who say that it's not acceptable to do it midaksav. So the question is, what about the warning of the Sotah? And the Maharsham says that from this Rambam we could see that Ksiva does help, because if the Rambam has to cite a pasuk, has to cite a verse to teach you that a woman who can't hear it cannot be given the warning, why do you need a pasuk for that? It's obvious. It's obvious. How could a husband warn his wife if she can't hear? The answer is he could warn her in ksiva, in writing. That's why the Torah has to tell you a special pasuk that if she's deaf, you can't give her the warning. So from this Rambam we see that ksiva for a Sotah is acceptable. And the logic that Maharsham says is very clear, because it's not similar to other situations, to the giving of a get, to a Shvuah. Why isn't it the same thing? Because here the main point is that the husband gets across his warning that he doesn't want his wife to be secluded with that person. There's no mitzvah of amira that he has to say the words, because the words themselves have significance. The words themselves express the idea that he wants his wife not to be alone with that person, and therefore it would be good even though it was only in writing and it was not verbalized. It's interesting also that Maharsham brings a proof from a Midrash that amira, that speech, is considered the same thing if it was done in writing. It says when Yitro came to join the Jewish people, he sent a message to Moshe, Yomer el Moshe, and he said to Moshe, Ani chosencha, I am your father-in-law. So how did he speak to Moshe? He wasn't near Moshe. So there's a dispute in the Midrash. One opinion says he sent him through a shliach. He sent a messenger with a message that he's coming to join them. And another opinion says he sent him a letter. So, but it says V'yamar, V'yomer el Moshe, and he said to Moshe. That shows that according to that opinion, at least, a mirror is the same thing if it was done bichtav or bichtav.